I see. That's very interesting. Have you met my smart globe? That's only a joke. Welcome, everybody, to Chaps Many Cultures, episode 149. Close to 150. I think that's another milestone, amongst many milestones, of course. Welcome to today's show, where we're going to talk about not smart globes, but GlobeSmart. And we're going to meet a very great friend of ours who has been at the core of the development of this particular tool, which we get to use in our work. So if you're interested in that, we'd love you to stick around. See you in a minute. Yes, welcome folks to the show of the business of culture and the culture of business, where we give you the tools and the tips to be the very best intercultural practitioner that you can be, or indeed the very best global professional. How are you today, pal?
I'm globally smart, not as globe smart as you are, but that was, I see what you did there. All right. Be smart, people. Let us know where on the globe you are right now, because we inquisitive minds would like to know where you're joining us from. Have you had breakfast yet? Have you had lunch? Maybe you've already had dinner. Who knows? We want to know. Tell us where you're watching this. There's a comment box below. And let's get smart together.
Absolutely. Well, of course, as I mentioned in the intro, we do a lot of work with people, global professionals, and we just don't bore them with our rhetoric and the stuff that we've learned, but we actually get to use some great tools. So in all seriousness, these are ways that outside of the time that we get to spend with our clients, they get access to these tools and they can use it to leverage their knowledge and spread it amongst their organizations. So one of the tools we use is called GlobeSmart, and we are very lucky today to welcome one of the brains behind this tool, which is often a question asked of us: who made this stuff up? Well, you're about to meet him. Let's welcome Ted Dale to the Two Chaps Many Cultures stage. How are you, Ted? Good to see you, sir.
Hello, I'm good, thank you.
Hey, Ted. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Now, where are you in the world? Seeing we tried to get everybody to, let us know where you are.
I am in the San Francisco Bay Area, where it is beautiful, sunny, blue sky today.
We can send you some snow if you feel. Yeah. Got plenty here in Chicago at the moment. Well, that's great. So, but of course, your story is multifaceted, and I guess just to kind of set the stage about what got you into this field, what got you interested, what got you passionate about cross-cultural work. What was your kind of origin story? What is your origin story?
Sure. So I am an MK. Do you know what an MK is?
Oh, I know. A missionary kid. Yeah.
I'm a missionary kid. That's right. You can't tell maybe by looking at me, but I was born and raised in Kyoto, Japan, almost 100 years ago. My parents were missionaries, and they were in Japan for over 40 years. So I actually grew up as obviously a very American-looking kid in Japan at the time when there weren't a lot of us gaijin around as there are now. When I was 7, I think we moved to New York City for 2 years. So I had a huge culture shock going from Japan to New York City for 2 years. I remember very clearly having trouble with my neighbors who were white, and having mostly friends with my Puerto Rican girlfriend and my black friends. And the only white guy I remember used to take my lunch every day in the schoolyard and throw it on the ground and step on it. So I had a hard time in the US. We moved back to Japan. Anyway, long story short, moved to Tokyo, where I went to the American school in Japan. Maybe some of you know the American school system. Very good school. I didn't like it at the time. But yeah, I was in Japan until I was 19, came to the US to go to university, and had a really, really hard time with adjusting to life here in the US. So I went to Central America with the American Friends Service Committee, a Quaker group, to help rebuild a village after the earthquake back, again, a long, long time ago. And ended up spending time in Central and South America, where I picked up a little bit of Spanish, but I felt, actually, believe it or not, more comfortable there because, again, I was a foreigner and I was used to being a foreigner as opposed to a native of the place where I was living. But ultimately, you know, this whole identity crisis was really a struggle for me. And I realized I can't keep running away from who I am. I have to figure this identity thing out. So I said, look, I am an American. I look like an American. I need to go back to America and figure out how I can live in America. So long story short, I moved to America and had a 10-year saga where I was struggling to find my way and found the intercultural field up at the Summer Institute of Intercultural Communication, which some of you may have heard of. Met people like George Renwick, Jack Condon, became my mentors. I realized that, wow, you know, this whole intercultural thing, I could do something with my crazy background, and that's how we got started.
So did you get it figured out? Did you manage to be okay with your passport identity?
So, you know, I still struggle, of course, with identity, but I'm now living in California. As I said, I'm very comfortable here. I do feel a bit strange at times. Like someone's asked me the other day, well, why don't you go talk to your friends? I said, well, honestly, outside of work, I don't have a lot of friends because I'm always working. I was like wondering why is that, you know? So maybe it has something to do with I'm still struggling with identity, because I'm very interested in meeting people who have lived abroad or who are from other cultures who live around me. I'm not interested in meeting people who have grown up here, and that's I'm sure a prejudice that I have. So,
and we talked about this just, I don't know, Brett, was it this week or the week before? Yeah. That some of us who have lived outside of their parents' cultures for such a long time, that we have a stronger interest in that what appears different from us, rather than where we came from. If maybe there's a better choice of words for that. And sometimes I'm guilty as charged, and I find myself sometimes when I interact with those who share my cultural roots, my origin roots, that I used to be dismissive of that, and then I meet them again and recognize, dang it, there is some validity to your way of life as well. Why shouldn't there be? And I'm not making that wrong, but I wasn't as interested in it before. And it's a weird thing. I acknowledge it too. It's not that easy.
Yeah. So anyway, long answer to your questions. Yeah, I still struggle with it a bit, even though I think that what I've done is I've thrown myself into this intercultural field and just been building tools on how to help people understand people who come from different backgrounds. So I'm happy doing that because that's where I'm comfortable, you know.
So would you say you're interested and your actual taking action in developing tools and things like that comes from that? Searching yourself, right? You've got a deep curiosity into how it has affected you. So you're turning that into a teaching tool to help other people explore that. I think that's
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's the only thing I know how to do. I tried to make a living doing other things and I couldn't survive. So we go to our strengths, right? Well, my strength is growing up as an intercultural kid, and so that's what I know. And all the creative challenge I have now is how can I take these, to me, incredible concepts of intercultural, you know, diversity, identity, and make engaging learning online. I don't think we're there yet. We're trying it with GlobeSmart, with Aperian Global. We try, but there's huge room for improvement. But it's a wonderful creative challenge for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned Aperian Global. It's your company, of course, and you're one of the founding partners there. So that this company, I guess, came out of this idea. Yes. Yeah. What was the origin of that?
Right. So back in the 80s, I think I was at the Monterey Institute of International Studies down in Monterey, California, and started, well, the actual story is that they asked me to do some intercultural training for AT&T in New Jersey. And so I said, okay, I know Japan, I can talk to them. They were interested in Japan. So I went to New Jersey with a professor from the Institute and another Japanese student. And I remember very clearly flying back somewhere over Nebraska. I remember I had this insight because I had an $800 check in my pocket from doing this program. And that was the most money I'd ever made. This is a long time ago, but I thought, wow, you know, this is something that maybe I should take seriously and think about doing. And so that's how I got started. Then I started doing seminars in Silicon Valley on working with the Japanese. More and more people came. Then I met Ernie Gunling, who's my colleague, who's an adjunct professor at UC Berkeley. And we started working together on our first product, which was a video series actually on working with Japan. And he was in Japan on a Fulbright at the time. He was writing some of the script. I was doing the development work here in the US, the production work, even though I'd never done videos before. And that's how we got started. Yeah, very entrepreneurial start. That was back in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we have to say congratulations. This year, or last year, you celebrated 30 years.
30 years.
That's fantastic. So
yeah,
that's a success story in and of itself, because not many small businesses, you know, last very long. So it's and it's not a small business, of course. Now you're a global brand, many different countries, offices all around the world. So congratulations on that. I just wanted to get that out because I think that's a great achievement. Just from
yeah, if you'd asked me that, you know, 10, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it. Yeah, you're right. It has been 30 years. And
yeah. Great.
So there you have it. You can make money doing this, right? So those of you watching,
I didn't.
My parents might be watching this. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that $800 was about 35 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. So that's.
Did you keep the check?
I haven't made more money than that since. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
Did you keep the check?
No, I should have.
Yeah. Okay, great. So in amongst this journey, of course, you wanted to develop tools, and GlobeSmart is again, we're just talking about the tool and the idea of using tools and the benefits of it, the efficacy of it. So GlobeSmart, how long ago did you start developing the tool itself?
Right. So we had this video series called Working with Japan, and some of our clients, and we had great clients because we're in Silicon Valley. Everybody wanted to know about Japan back in the day. And so that was easy for me with my background. And then clients like, I think it was Cisco. I think the 4 founding customers of GlobeSmart were Cisco Systems, Intel, Kodak, believe it or not, and a large engineering firm. And they said, can you do something on the internet? And I said, sure. What is the internet? So it was a long time. We found it's a true story, 2 Indian developers living in Des Moines, Iowa, who had married 2 women from Des Moines, Iowa, one of whom came to one of our programs. And that's how we heard about them. They said, sure, we'll create something on the internet for you. And we said, let's call it GlobeSmart. And so that's how it got started with 10 countries. 10 cultures. We got our clients to allow us to interview their employees all over the world. And we started with 10. Now we have 99. We're just about to have 100 shortly. And yeah, it's grown from there. We have about 200 corporate global clients using GlobeSmart platform. With a 90% renewal rate. So yeah, it's worked out pretty well.
So the brand GlobeSmart was the original name. So you never changed or rebranded it. That was, you hit it out of the ballpark right off the gate.
Right. I think it was in the shower one day, you know. But people have said, you know, you should rebrand your company. Instead of Aperian Global, you should call it the GlobeSmart company, because people know us as GlobeSmart. They don't remember Aperian Global, but GlobeSmart is just one of the products of Aperian Global.
So you said the clients allowed you to interview all their employees across multiple locations. So you went about in a similar way as one of the founding scientists in cross-cultural social studies, Mr. Geert Hofstede, did it for IBM back in the day. So you followed a simple path. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, we didn't interview all their employees, but yeah, we interviewed many, many employees. We have a whole protocol when we add countries today. We have a very detailed protocol that we go through. We interview people from the culture. We interview foreigners who have a lot of experience working with the people from the culture. We combine all that data. We write up an initial draft. We get feedback on it. We post it. We get ongoing feedback. Today, we still get feedback all the time from our users around the globe, and we make changes. Yeah, it's quite a detailed research.
So it's a dynamic tool. So that's a question that we often get in the training room as well. Where does that data come from? Is it current? Is it kept current? So this is a living database, right? It's not once and done. This is something that you add on and continuously improve, correct?
Right. I mean, we do, in part depend on our users, because we have many, many, many users all over the world to help us. Because in the GlobeSmart tool, which should I show that here?
Of course. And while you pull it up, I just want to honor our good friend and colleague Basma in the Twin Cities, who's tuning in and saying she's found us after 6 hours of teaching, and now she's wanting to decompress with us. Well, good luck with that, Basma.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see it now?
We're seeing it here.
There it is.
Oh, good. Yeah. So basically the platform has three parts to it, right? On the left here, you see a whole series of various e-learning components, including other assessments as well. And then on the top right here, you see the GlobeSmart, what we call the profile, where you can do your comparison with people in the 5 dimensions of culture. And then below here, you see the culture guide section. So started out with just the culture guide section, so for example, if you want to look at Brazil, you can type in Brazil or find it there, and then you can see actually over 50 topics. If you click down into these, there's over 50 topics for each culture, and then you can click down to even a further level. You can see actually all the topics in the index. There's those topics across just about 100 cultures in the culture guides. And that's what I was just talking about a minute ago, the research and review process. And then the other part of the tool is the profile. So that's this here, where you can view your profile. You can see that I must have clicked on I clicked on Spanish. Well, let me click on English. I can go to Chinese if I want.
That's a good question. How many languages is the website available in?
So right now, this part here is just in 6 languages here. We're adding more all the time. We're adding Korean in about a week or so. The actual survey is in a few more languages than that. And then what you see here is this is maybe a good way to talk about myself. You're asking me, Brett. So if you look at my profile on these scales, right, independent versus interdependent, or you might say individual versus group orientation, egalitarianism versus status, risk versus certainty, direct versus indirect communication style, and then task versus relationship orientation, right? So if you look at me, you can see that I'm pretty much, I was actually off the chart on independence and risk. So that's obviously why I'd be crazy enough to try to start a company. But what you can do here is you can either retake the survey, which I won't do, but it works well on a mobile device now as well, or you can, sorry, let me go back to where it was. You can compare to either teams you create, to individuals you invite, or to any of the almost 100 cultures in the tool. So let me just select one at random here, and I'll also select a colleague of mine. And then you can see right away the difference on the profiles, either for me relative to the average profile based on the research to date, in this case for Egypt, or for my colleague Anthony, based on his responses to the survey. And by the way, you would invite them in the system, they get an email, they have to accept. Once they accept, you can see their profile.
And Basma, Ted chose Egypt completely randomly. It has nothing to do with it. But still,
That's right. That's right.
So
So
very
if
intuitive.
if I want to know more about that, I can click on Egypt in this case, and I can either get advice from me, or I can go to the culture guide that I just showed you for Egypt. In this case, I'll click on advice for me, and I will immediately get dynamically generated advice based on our relative positioning on the profiles over here on the left, on all these very practical topics like building relationships, communicating feedback, leading people, managing meetings, etc. So that's the profile part of the tool. And then if I wanted to go to the culture guide, I would just click here, or I can get to it from the dashboard, and then I would go to the sections that I mentioned earlier here. And then the third part of the tool is the learning modules and assessments. So we have a wide variety of these depending on what you're interested in, and you can click on them, and they basically are e-learning that play in your browser.
And they're on demand, self-guided.
Yeah.
Well, basically like learning journeys you can take yourself through to get some tips and insights into those topics.
Yeah. We also now have a new tool called the Inclusive Behaviors Inventory, which is just as it says, it's about how inclusive are you. So very, very soon we'll actually be loading that as part of the GlobeSmart license. So you'll not only get the culture guides, the profile, learning model, you'll also get this inclusive behavior inventory survey.
nice. I like that.
Yeah, because the brand is really, if this is our GlobeSmart website, you know, if you see in the upper left here, it's really inclusion globally. That's exactly what we do. So, you know, we started just talking about intercultural issues when, you know, intercultural and domestic diversity issues used to be separate. This is like 20 years ago, and then gradually they've come together. So now it's logical that intercultural comes under the larger rubric of inclusion. And so basically what we're teaching and practicing is inclusion on a global scale.
How many users do you currently have? I remember you said a number. I'm not sure if that's public information, but how many people access this?
Well, we have well over 1 million users, but that's not all at the same time. But yeah, there's quite a bit more than that at this point. So
massive.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And so companies can offer access to this in their global village of employees, right? So they, and the way that we use it, I guess, is to do it with one-on-one programs that allow us to kind of give them some insights. It's getting back to that kind of origin that's a surprise to a lot of clients, where we actually say to them, and we've said it many times on this show, that the basis of the insight is best taken from your own perspective first, really understanding your own culture, and in this case, understanding your own individual preference and style through the GlobeSmart, and then applying it to the potential gaps that you might see with the cultures you're working with. So it could be, it's very useful for global organizations to do that. Yeah.
And I always tell people, you know, use the profile just as the starting point for a discussion. So in other words, this is not the end all by any means. Of course not. You know, this does not in any way mean that, you know, all Argentines, people from Argentina are going to be on this. Of course not. This is an average of all the research available, but it's a helpful generalization to get you started thinking, maybe we have some differences. I wonder what those are. Some of them may be personality. Some of them may be a variety of things. Some of them may be cultural, in that if they're cultural, then this tool can be very, very helpful. Right. But it's certainly not the gospel truth to solve all your problems, but it is a good place to start. Yeah.
I found that once I've used it, I've used it for many years now, but it's also very dependent on function. You know, job function can be a variant in this particular case, and there seems to be a pattern. You can establish a pattern after you get used to the tool, which is quite useful as well. Yeah.
Right. Like, I'll give you an example here. My colleague Michael, who works closely with me, if you can see, the others are still there, but they're faded in the background because I selected Michael. So, you know, he's very status oriented over here compared to me. He's more similar to me towards the risk, but look at the indirect and relationship way over here on the right, and I'm way over here on the left. So again, there's no right or wrong here, but it's really useful for me as his manager to understand that, wow, he's status oriented and he's fairly indirect compared to me, and he's very relationship oriented. So that means that if he's probably not going to tell me what he really thinks unless I really work on the relationship with him and encourage him and do all the things that we teach about how to, engage with people who are more indirect. And it's true. It's very true. I found this to be extremely true in our working relationship. So. Yeah.
I've had the experience more than once when people had taken the questionnaire and created their own cultural profile, and then we plotted it against their passport culture, and obviously there were gaps between those were not parallel lines or overlapping lines, and that's when the conversation gets really rich, when people start disagreeing with their country cultural profile and start looking for answers why their profile comes out differently than the average of their country.
Right.
And that's when we really dig deeper into the introspection of the client. So because we tell them from day one, it's in order to be successful in a global context, in order to compare your behavioral preference with that of a different culture, of that of a person that's not from your environment, you got to first know yourself. You need to know what is your factory setting, right? And it doesn't make sense to put the flag on it. The flag can be, as you said, it's a conversation starter, and now we're beginning to dive deeper into the nuance, and that's when the conversation really takes shape.
Exactly. So I just went here while you were talking to US and Japan. So these are the two. Obviously, I grew up in Japan, and you can see Japan is, in general, pretty far over to the right. Now, I will say that 20 years ago, the Japanese profile was further to the right. Now, we do adjust these every few years because cultures do evolve and change. And so even though they're still farther to the right, they're not as far to the right as they were. And the US has also shifted a bit. Many people say, well, Americans are direct. Well, actually, if you see right here, and if I were to compare to Germany or the Netherlands or whatever, you can see that Americans are not very, as Christian, you know very well, Americans are not very direct at all.
They have nothing on us.
Right. But you're absolutely right. These are averages, and you have to understand that, like with any average, that does not mean that everyone falls there. No, of course not. It's simply the beginning of a dialogue that hopefully will be helpful. What happens is that people in business, many of them have never thought of these things. Like, what do you mean indirect or status, or like, and then when you start looking at this and giving them these terminology to have a discussion, they realize that maybe that's why so and so doesn't speak up so much in these calls, or that's why it takes them so long to make a decision. And often, it's definitely a part of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle, but it's definitely a piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
And what you just said completely rings true for me, because in the corporate world, not everybody is familiar with this type of analysis and assessment. Case in point, I was invited to give a webinar today for a human resources certification organization based in the US, but global audience today. We had, 2,700 people attended the webinar, and I included GlobeSmart as part of the toolbox that I work with, right? There was a slide like the one we're looking at now. I used that in the presentation, and there were comments popping up. What is this? And, this looks fascinating. Tell us more about this. Like, really? This is new? So working in our field, we sometimes get that tunnel vision of thinking, well, by now everybody should know what this is, right? This is nothing new. And yet there's still a lot of people who haven't been introduced to this information.
Right. And you're absolutely right. And again, this is not the end all by any means. This is the beginning. I mean, these dimensions are very broad, and these are very general statements that you see here. I'm just again showing you. I just happen to click on Angola. So again, think of a bell curve. If those points on there would be the top of the bell curve, but many people would be further to the left or further to the right. It's just a place to begin the discussion, but it's a helpful place. It's a helpful starting place. Yeah.
And as you've mentioned a couple of times, this isn't a measurement of right or wrong. And I think many times the other the other possibility of this, and it's been used by clients that I've used, as I said, so if I give this to my team immediately, maybe the people that report to me immediately, I've had people say this is a great icebreaker because you're coming to it as a senior person and offering this to your team, and everybody's kind of getting some insights on a continuum. And so it's not a personal thing. It's not you're direct and so therefore you're wrong. You know, this is just some insights into, and I know people have said to me, this has been a great icebreaker for me to help onboard me as a leader. To give some insights, you know, people say, when you hear me being direct, that's just my cultural background. It's not me being rude. It's
Right.
I just think it's a really fun thing to use these type of tools in that manner. Yeah,
Exactly. And I just happened to pull up a random. This is called Ted's team. I have many teams. This is just 3 people two other people I work with actually. But yeah, exactly. It's a great way to start a meeting, to say, hey, let's talk about how we engage in our meetings. And this is one tool, not the only tool, but like you just said, you can say, well, it just shows that you're very task-oriented, me, and very risk-oriented, me. Yeah. So what would that mean? Like, what does that mean, and how I engage with you? What do you see? Or, I say, well, yeah. And also, remember, this is an inclusion diversity tool, because what do you not see on your team? Like, maybe there's not enough people on the certainty side on this team, right? So what might you be missing? If you're trying to reach people who are different style than you, what are you not seeing, and what are you not understanding about the need for certainty-oriented people to have more detail, to have more background context, et cetera, right?
yeah.
Talking about background context, there is a lot of depth to the culture guides section of this website. For those of you who have dabbled with a tool similar to this, or you've been introduced to it because your cultural trainer brought it to the training room, the profile comparison is great, as we just established. If you choose to purchase licenses for yourself or for your team, you get access to the whole depth and breadth of this catalog, which will keep you busy for quite a while. So there is no shortage of information in there.
Yeah.
And even if I go in, and I go in repeatedly to refresh my memory, to prepare myself for a training session, I find myself surprised over and over again at some intersection in the content that I hadn't seen before. So this is well worked out and well thought out.
Yeah.
And there's, I was just, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to point out, well, go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe you were going to say the same thing, because I can see you bringing up Bangladesh. So this is kind of like, we think about some generalities when it comes to regional tendencies for cultures, like we might say Asia in this case, or Europe. But there's certainly, as Christian so rightly said, I found some really key information specific to the country that kind of goes against what we might collectively think. So I don't know. Yeah.
Right. And like I was mentioning in the footer, and of course here you can select the language. By the way, this language selector is actually in the culture guides piece. This is Google Translate, so it's not perfect. It's machine translation, but in the profile components, it's actually professionally translated. So there is a difference in terms of translation.
Yeah.
Well, Ted, I'm curious, because 30 years of Aperian, or 30 plus years of Aperian Global now in GlobeSmart, how would you say has the industry, or not the industry developed, I would like to say, how did you see the marketplace react differently to your service and your product now than they did when you started out? Has there been a shift or a development?
Sure. I mean, people usually come to us, or they used to come to us after they've fallen on their face. Like in India, for example, Americans say, well, they speak English, so it should be fine. And of course, those of you who experience, they go to India, they work with India, and they realize that, they don't tell us directly when there's a problem. They're very indirect communicators. What's that about? And so obviously, for those of you who have used GlobeSmart or in this field, you know that a lot of it has to do with the importance of hierarchy, the importance of not embarrassing your boss, et cetera, et cetera. So the communication is less direct, et cetera. So those people may have found us after they failed in India, for example, but we have a very small marketing and sales team. They're very good, but they're very small. So a lot of people don't find us. Now, though, I will say that the area of inclusion and DEI, right? We are being approached by more and more DEI professionals saying, hey, this is obviously a critical part of diversity, equity, inclusion, and how can you help us? And so we not only show them, as I said, the GlobeSmart tool, but also those, the culture guides, but also the how the profile can help them, and the new assessments like the like I mentioned, the inclusive behaviors inventory here, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah. So I think there's a shift in terms of who's approaching us. We had a call this morning, and I think we said that there was over 60% of our inquiries are now coming from people with diversity, equity, or inclusion titles in their name.
So would it be safe to say then that the corporate world that was once maybe a bit ignorant or reluctant to embrace the work that we do, that has given way to a more openness around this?
Certainly, in the sense that inclusion, as probably most of your viewers know, is now just hugely important. It's certainly in the U.S. and growing in EMEA and even in APAC, starting to grow more. And so, for those people who are in the inclusion space who are interested in looking at it globally as opposed to just domestically, they hopefully will find us, because that's where we can add value. If it's just domestic, mostly black, white, and race issues, we're not the ones to go to. But if it's looking at inclusion, diversity, equity on a global scale, that's where we can be helpful.
Nice. Excellent. Great. Well, thanks for giving us a tour.
Sure, anytime.
No, congratulations again on the longevity, and of course it's the one thing is that it's always at the cutting edge, just because it's you've got some great history behind you. I mean, this new iteration that we've just seen here is kind of relatively new. It developed in the past couple of years, right? So the way it looks, it's much more user friendly. It's developed all the time, and I think that's what the feedback we've got from clients anyway. It is intuitive, and it has to be in this day and age where people are used to scrolling and clicking through things. So it's a great tool, and I'm always proud to use it. So and I'm not just saying that to make you feel good. It really helps us. It makes us look good, right?
Did you get the $20, Brad?
I'm going to keep that check, by the way. Don't worry.
Is there money involved? Nobody told me.
Now I got to send him $10. Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. What we won't do for cash. All right.
That's right. Yeah.
But not everything in the world costs money. Remember, we had a show yesterday. We had one of our how-to episodes. If you haven't watched that yet, go back, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. There's an archive. It's not hard to find. There's your worksheet for it. So follow the link. It's also in the comment box on YouTube. Shouldn't be hard. Get your worksheet. Some tips on how to handle blunt feedback. That was the topic of our how-to episode yesterday.
Absolutely. The type of information you would find in GlobeSmart too, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that I just talking of free, the GlobeSmart, everyone can get their own private personal for free, right? If they go to globesmart.com, you can actually get a snapshot of your own without paying for anything. So
Right. You can go and get your own profile. But what you cannot do for free is you can't invite other people, and you can't compare to other cultures, and you also can't see the culture guides. But yeah, you can certainly play with it, a portion of it for free, and then the upgrade is, I think, $65. So
yeah, no, that's great. So again, as Christian said, go to our click on that link in our archive. We've got that free tip sheet there. And of course, if you like what you see and hear, and you're not offended too much, why don't you come along and subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with your friends, share it with all the people and professionals and that kind of thing you interact with around the globe. We would very much appreciate it. We need to be loved. We don't have to pay us like Ted. But it's all good fun, and we really appreciate your time, Ted. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been good to talk to you. And I guess that's it. Another episode in the can, episode 149, 2 Chaps Mini Cultures. And we will see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Ciao for now.
Bye.